Alrighty. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Watch and Learn monthly webinar series. Today's webinar, we'll be discussing Pennsylvania's new Solar for School grant program, as well as reviewing our own Pennsylvania Solar Center's Get Solar Technical Assistance Program that can help your school, business, or nonprofit go through the entire solar procurement process. I'm Leo Kowalski, Director of Transformation with Pennsylvania Solar Center and the Get Solar team. Before we get started, just few housekeeping items. We invite you to type your name and organization in the chat. I can see a lot of folks already doing that. We just want our speakers to know who's here attending today. If you have a question, please type it in the Q&A section of the chat. There's your regular chat Q&A. Put in the Q&A. We'll work on answering that with our team, or if it's questions directly to our speakers today, we'll make sure that they get those fielded. But really excited to have you all here today. This is really wonderful moment for Pennsylvania broadly and for the solar world. So we want to get into it as quickly as possible. I'll tell you a little bit more about the Pennsylvania Solar Center really quickly. As you can see the first slide, our vision and mission is to really make Pennsylvania a leading state in the country for renewable energy. And to do that in a way that really benefits everybody. The really beautiful thing about solar is a very democratizing energy resource. And with this program we're going to be discussing today, it's really tangible how solar can affect every single community in this state, and that impact can affect every organization. And for folks on the call that are from school districts, I really want you to think about when we talk about solar, we're going to talk a lot about dollars and cents, but think about that really intangible effect on your mission. $50,000 savings, $100,000 savings a year. What does that mean for your school? Salaries paid or resources for your students. So this is really tangible effect that it'll have on your organization and the community. Right. Just want to give a quick shout out to our foundation supporters and the supporters from the business community. These folks make it possible for us to do our work, and we're really grateful for everything that you do for us. Quick overview about what the Pennsylvania Solar Center does. Whoops. And I'll get through this super quickly. And we basically have 3 buckets of work that we do. So we do a little bit of, in reverse order here, we do a little bit of policy and education work. We work with wonderful folks in government, like Representative Fiedler is joining us today, to try to advocate for the most robust and beneficial solar policy that we can get, and make sure that folks know how tangible those effects are on their community. We do have a bit of outreach and public resources available on our website. So we do these webinars monthly, of course. But we also have some toolkits for landowners, for example. If you're approached by a solar developer or you're a farmer landowner, we have a guide that can help you understand your rights, your best practices economically, and some resources that can help you navigate that process. We have some permitting guides. We have a developer directory if you're looking for a solar installer in your region. Some maps that show where solar installations are. A lot of really great resources available on our website, as well as the portal to our technical support, which many of you folks might be interested today. And that's our transform sector of what we do, where we really try to help an organization, and we'll talk about this at the end of the presentation, but really help your organization go from maybe knowing nothing about solar to navigating the entire process and successfully installing your own system. But without further ado, I really want to get to our first speaker. None of us would be here talking about this right now without Representative Elizabeth Fiedler. We've included bios for our speakers today in your registration, so I won't get too deeply into it, but I just want to say that we're so grateful to have you here today, Representative Fiedler. What an amazing champion to move this through so quickly. We were just talking about before the webinar started, we never see stuff like this in the solar world, certainly not in Pennsylvania, and we think this is the start of something really special. So I'll stop talking and let Representative Fiedler take it from there.
Thank you so much, Leo, for your kind words and the warm welcome. I am State Representative Elizabeth Fiedler. Really, really proud to be here with you. It feels like a real milestone. I don't say that about every webinar, but this one is going to be both a very informative and helpful one, but also really is a milestone for this brand new state program, Solar for Schools. I am very proud to have worked on Solar for Schools for about a year and a half, as we were saying, which in the legislature is actually not that long, but it did feel like a long time. So grateful we got it across the line with a $25 million appropriation. And now the program, its creation and execution is really in the very capable hands of DCED, who you'll hear from in a few minutes. They've been tremendous in really executing the vision and bringing this idea, this concept into a brand new brand new evolution, brand new program. Ever since the beginning, my goal really with this legislation is to help school districts, which I can see many of you are from school districts, which is so cool to see it pop up from across the state. My goal has really been to help school districts across Pennsylvania save money. I am the daughter of 2 public school teachers and the parent of 2 public school students. So I know very much firsthand how hard school board members and administrators and staff work and often do so much with limited resources. So really one of the main goals of Solar for Schools is to help school districts save money, to give you all that tool, and then put it in your hands. You can reinvest those dollars in your school in the education and enrichment activities, however you see fit. So I am just really excited to be here with you today. I'm excited for the Solar for Schools guidelines, which are out and you will hear more about, and certainly excited for applications to open and hope that many school districts will take that next step and apply. I want to say thank you finally to an amazing coalition that helped us get this program across the line. And really at the heart of that was PA Solar Center, your hosts today, who are so knowledgeable and compassionate and patient and just tremendous champions in their own right in this field. So thank you all for hosting this. Thank you to everyone who's taking time out of their day today to learn about Solar for Schools, which I could talk about all day. But you are in good hands with the folks who are on this call. And I'm just excited to hear more about the next steps for Solar for Schools and looking forward to coming out to some ribbon cuttings in a couple of months. Thank you all again, and really excited for the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Fiedler. We're so grateful to have you here. I don't think we have any questions in the Q&A yet, but I know John and Alexis, if there's any questions that you picked up in the chat that you want to tee up. We also will have an opportunity to have Q&A at the end as well, if folks want to absorb a little bit more information. And then Representative Fiedler, if you want to just keep an eye on the Q&A as we go through, there might be folks come up with questions as we move through, especially as Brian gives us some more details on the program. But yeah, really wonderful work. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right. We'll be zooming through. We're really grateful to have Brian Eckert here with Director of Site Development with the DCED, the Department of Community Economic Development. The program, from legislation conceptualization to implementation in a very short period of time. These folks have done a really wonderful job of putting this program together and making it real so that we can work on another very quick timeline to get schools available for receiving this money. So we're really grateful to have you on the call, Brian. And if you want to take over, just let me know when you want me to move through slides. And again, please put questions in Q&A for Brian. We'll queue him up to answer them afterwards, and then at the end of the presentation as well.
Thank you. And I want to thank also Representative Fiedler and the PA Solar Center for hosting this today. This has been a work in process for us, and we've worked really closely both with the representative's office, and we've gone through a process in talking to people in the solar industry here in Pennsylvania and other states, and we think we put together a pretty good Solar for Schools program. I do want to say at the onset that I am not going to be the main point of contact, although if there's questions, I certainly can answer them. I'm pitching in here for Devin Gray, who is my director of CFA programs. He also works in my office of site development. He manages the Solar for School programs, but also many other programs for me in that office. So he will be the main point of contact. But I just want to let you know that if he's not available, you can certainly reach out to me. Next slide, please. So we're here to talk about the Solar for School programs, which, like Leo said earlier, this is a great program to help reduce solar school districts' energy costs for across the state. That's the whole purpose behind this. Next slide, please. So with this program, we have eligible applicants. There are many different types of eligible applicants: school districts, immediate, intermediate units, area career and technical schools, charter schools. You can see the list on there. These are the eligible applicants to apply for the funding directly. They would need to be the direct applicant for these funds. Next slide. The eligible project is either a solar at a school facility that either includes solar thermal or solar voltaic systems that convert to the electric energy. That's the idea behind this. Both photovoltaic and thermal are eligible projects under this. In order to qualify for the program, the project must go through a successful solar facility site assessment. We're going to go into a little more details on that a little bit later. But one thing before we go on to the eligible project costs about the projects, we've gotten a lot of questions here. There's one project per application. Now, we define projects as a work occurring on at a single facility or campus or connecting to a single meter. I want to go into a little bit more about that so that people understand what we're saying here. There are many different types of school districts across the state. Obviously, we have those many of the eligible applicants there, but some school districts are in urban areas and they're a single building. Some school districts are in rural areas and they may have campuses. They may have multiple buildings on the same campus. They may have multiple buildings spread out through the district. So the idea here is if you have a school district that's at a campus with 1 meter, that's one project, even if there's several buildings on it. If it's a school district that has multiple buildings scattered but different meters, then there would need to be one application per project, meaning per facility that you're going to be putting the solar system on. Eligible project cost. This is for the purchase and installation of the solar system itself. We can pay for energy storing costs directly related to the solar the energy that's produced by the system. We do not do PPAs under this program. I may end up using acronyms. If I do, please ask me. Power purchase agreements are not allowable currently under this program. However, we have put in here operations and maintenance contract offered by the installer. We will pay for them up to 2 years for the operation and maintenance that's provided by the qualified installer. Next slide, please. So the maximum grant amounts, these are based on the some aid ratios that we have determined with the Department of Education. We have worked with them on looking at what other states are doing and how they are allocating their solar funds, to the various different school districts. We also worked with the Department of Education here to see those very similar aid ratios that are used in other states and how we can use that. And this is how it's being broken up. We're using the market value and personal income weighted average aid ratios. Those that are a greater or equal to 0.7, the eligible costs are 50% of the project cost, or the lesser of 500,000 or 50% of the project cost. If the aid ratio is between 0.5 and 0.7, then it's the lesser of 400,000 or 40% of the project cost. And then if the aid ratio is less than 0.5, it's the lesser of 300,000 or 30% of the total project cost. Next slide, please. So these funds, we have $25 million that was allocated to the program. The funds are going to be divided up equally between 3 regions as the legislation, outlines. The regions are based on population, and these are the 3 regions here. for visual purposes, so it's easier to see. If you look at the next slide, you'll see a map that divides the regions, so you can see it visually. Sometimes I think that looking at it visually, it gives you a better optics as to what the regions are. But the 25 million that was allocated to the Solar for Schools program will be divided up equally between these three regions. Next slide, please. So I want to go through a couple of definitions that are real important in this program. A school facility is defined as an educational building and surrounding premises owned by the eligible applicant. So this goes to what I was talking about earlier with the different types of school districts and the different types of how they are laid out. The facility that is being part of the application or the project, as we look at it, must be owned by the eligible applicant. In situations where in charter schools, cyber schools, I should have addressed that back when I went through the aid ratios, but the aid ratios for charter schools and cyber schools are going to be based on the location of the school district in which the administrative headquarters are located of the cyber school. A qualified provider. So we have the definition of a qualified provider here is one that is NAPCEP certified and has installed a minimum of 3 PV or solar thermal systems. The qualified provider comes into play when we are looking at the solar site assessment. The solar site assessment must be done by a qualified provider, and the installation must be provided by a qualified installer. Next slide, please. So I want to take a little time and spend a little bit of time on the solar facility site assessment, because this is the biggest piece of the application and the most important piece of the application that we're going to be obtaining from the applicants here. Solar site assessment must be done by a qualified provider, and it must include various a minimum of these 5 different items that we're looking at here. So when we talk about the orientation of proposed solar system location, this is going to mean, is it a ground mount? Is it roof mount? What is the size? What is the square footage of the proposed solar array? What's the orientation? Is it if it's a proposed array that's located on a roof, what are the inclinations in the form of degrees in relation to the roof? That's what we're looking for there. The solar shading study, again, that's the study should outline the permanent and seasonal shading of the proposed array location. 25-year cash flow for the system, and it should outline the system size as well in the solar facility site assessment, which I think most of them do. A 25-year cash flow analysis, the estimated overall cost of the project, and a maintenance and operation plan. Like I said, we have included in here provisions for at least for 2 years of paying for the operation and maintenance that's provided by the installer. Now, one thing you keep in mind here, the qualified provider who is doing the site assessment cannot be the provider who is installing the system. That is a very important piece to know. Next slide, please. So again, also the projects must be bid out, but you have 2 options to bid out the project, either using GISA, which is the Guaranteed Savings Energy Act, or using the Separations Act. One thing to keep in mind that if you're using the Separations Act, every contract, plumbing, heating, ventilation, electrical, must be bid separately. That's why they call it the Separations Act, so that the contracts are broken out and bid separately. There is a clawback provision in these grants, and it only is triggered if the property is transferred before 20 years, within 20 years. It's prorated, so if the property is sold or transferred within the 20-year period, in the first 5 years, the purchaser and the purchasing entity must repay 80% of the grant, and then it goes down for years. So it's 60% of the grant between 5 and 10 years, 40% of the grant between 10 and 15 years, and like you see, it goes down. And then after 20 years, that goes away. But it's not paid by the school district; it's paid by the entity purchasing the school. I just wanted to make sure that that's clear there. Next slide. So our initial application window is going to be November 1st through January 31st of 2025. We are anticipating that there would be enough applications that we receive just because of the amount of questions and calls that we've been getting. We think that we're going to have enough applications during that time frame. If for some reason that we don't, we will either extend it or reopen it again. We have on our website, dced.pa.gov, the guidelines are there. You will see, you will be able to see, there's also resources on there. There's checklists that you can look at. There's a toolkit link there. Maps, also frequently asked questions. I would anticipate that frequently asked questions being updated on an ongoing basis as we go through it, because we are viewing this as a pilot in a sense, in that we do anticipate that this program with the support from Representative Fiedler is going to continue on even beyond this year. And the hope is that additional funds will be put back into this program in the next budget season. So there will definitely be additional chances to apply for this. Our online single application link is listed right there. Again, if you were to go to dced.pa.gov and in the search bar, either type in Solar for Schools or even S4S, S the number 4 and the letter S again, the web page will come up. You will not have the icon to apply for fundings at this time. You will on November 1st. That's when the application will go up. It is $100 non-refundable application fee, and there are a number of different ways you can contact us. There is our customer service office there. They can put you in contact. I mean, if you just tell them that you have questions regarding Solar for Schools, it'll get to either Devin or myself. This is the Center for Business office. Again, this is also our resource account. You can email questions to the resource account at the bottom there. And the next page will have Devin and my contact information there. So I tried to go over at a high level without getting too much in the weeds, to give everyone an opportunity to hear about the program. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have and go into as much detail as possible.
Oh, thank you so much, Brian. We're really grateful for you to run through that. And I know I'm glad we're a little ahead of time because we have quite a few questions, I believe.
I was seeing that. I was like, okay, maybe.
Yeah. No, it's okay. My colleague at the Solar Center, John Buniratapan, our senior program manager, he's been categorized and organized them. So John's going to help us walk through these in some organized way. So I'll hand it over to John if you want to start teeing up the questions, and we'll see if we'll do our best to try to answer everything. Obviously, this is going to be a dialogue, and Brian shared his contact information, and we'll share ours, our program support as well. So if we somehow ever miss your question, or you have some follow-up, there's plenty of time to address that, but we'll do what we can right now. So I'll just turn it over to John.
Thanks, Leo. Yeah, we've got, by my count right now, 28 questions, so we might not get to all of them, but there is that FAQ page that Brian mentioned. We'll make sure to include all of those questions and answers and make that available along with the webinar recording and the slide deck. I know that was another question too. So I'll just start from the top. That's probably the easiest thing to do right now. Tony Testa had a question. What is the review period once an application is successfully submitted? Is it conducted in waves or as received?
So we're going to be reviewing these as they come in. So it's not going to be, it's not going to be a situation where we're going to be taking the applications, waiting until January 31st, and then making awards. As these come in, we will be reviewing these and approving those applications on an ongoing basis up until January 31st, at which time we believe that we will probably have exhausted all the funds at that time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Next question was regarding IRA funding. And I'd just like to say, we'd want to have that conversation with your accountants and solicitors, and we can't give tax advice on that.
I'm not going to give tax advice, but I will say on that IRA. So I will check with, there are federal tax incentives for school districts that are installing solar, and those tax exempt, and this is another reason why we can't do PPAs on this, because the intent here is for those incentives to go back to the school district. In order for that to happen, the school district has to own the system. But yes, those tax incentives are there for you. I am not a tax expert, so I'm not going to give you tax advice, but there are at least 30% to 40% tax incentives out there, depending on the situation of the school district, the location. But yeah, those can help offset the cost of this.
Great, thank you. Another quick question. Is there a template for a letter of support by the authorized school representative, or will one be made available?
I mean, we don't have one. We don't tend to say, dictate how the letter support looks like or what it's from. But what we're looking for here is that we do have a sample resolution for your board in our guidelines. We do want to know that this project was authorized by the school board. We do want to know that there is support from it for it, but we don't necessarily have a template for the letter. Okay.
And I'll ask one more question from Tony, and then move on to some other folks, just so we can get to those as well. He'd asked, should we apply individually for our buildings or in one application for the district? So kind of bundling sites together as one application or separating them into separate applications.
Yep. Again, that's going to depend on the school district, and it's going to go back to how the school district is laid out and where the buildings are. If the buildings are on separate meters, you're going to have a separate application for each one of those buildings. If it's a campus that has multiple buildings on it with 1 meter, then yes, you can apply one project for those buildings that are on that campus.
Okay, so if it's behind 1 meter, one application. If there's multiple meters, multiple applications would be required.
Correct.
Okay, and yes, we've answered Steve's question. That was the next one I see. And Grace as well. Thanks, Grace. Glad to see you're here. She also had a question. It's unclear whether enabling upgrades can be included in the total project cost, and thus the Solar for Schools grant amount calculation. Are enabling upgrade costs allowed to be included in this calculation?
No, and I should have probably addressed that. So we cannot. So this is where I think the question is going, and if I'm mistaken, then please let me know or ask the question again. But if the question is, so if this is a rooftop system and there needs to be structural improvements made to the roof in order for the solar system to be installed, we can't make those improvements on the roof. These funds are just for the purchase and the installation of the solar system. And that roof integrity analysis is part of this. If it's a rooftop system, is part of that solar assessment. Likewise, with a ground mount system, that solar assessment it will include those ground mount situations and whether it will support ground mount.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there a source or a listing, or will there be a listing of the qualified providers that can complete those feasibility analyses?
So no, we don't have nor maintain a list of the qualified providers. We provided what we're looking for as far as documents from the qualified providers. So in other words, you have to be NAPCEP certified. You had to have 3 successful installations. Those are what we're looking for the qualified providers.
Okay, so if a school district was entering into an agreement with a qualified assessor, it would be on the assessor to.
Yeah, we would be looking for that information to be provided that they were qualified. Yep.
Okay, and would they submit that with their application package?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. One here from James saying the timing of the grant seems a bit difficult given that the application will open up November 1st. There would have to be board approval to have the assessment completed. And then some school districts may not have a board meeting in December. So the next time they'd be able to review would be January in some time, and then January 31st would be the application deadline. So a bit of a tight window.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a situation where, where you're waiting for your board approval, we can work with you on that. I mean, we do that sometimes with some of our other programs. Obviously, we deal with a lot of municipalities and municipal authorities, and they have the same situation. So we can work with you on that. But it is an item, so if it's going to be delayed in your application, you could submit the application in November and say, hey, look, I'm not going to have my board approval until January. That's fine. We can work with you on that.
Okay. Troy had a really good question. Is there a set of approved assumptions for electricity rate increases, SREC values, length of time for SRECs, and dollar per watt per region, so that the applications could be compared somewhat apples to apples?
So we don't have that set across the region because, like you said, the standard, the energy costs across the state are going to vary depending on where you're located. We will, in the interim, be developing some sort of evaluation criteria that we are going to be looking at, and the cost per watt as a benchmark, and what was the other? And the cost per watt and the demographics of the area are the 2 highest weighted items in that scoring, but it's not fully flushed out yet of how they're going to be looking at that.
Okay.
We are in the process of doing that right now.
Thank you for all the hard work so far, and rolling through these questions too. One from Ralph here. Hey, Ralph, good to see you here. Will there be priority? I'm sorry, it just disappeared. Will additional financial consideration and/or priority be given to school districts that have lost a coal-fired power plant, significantly impacting their tax rolls and area jobs? One of the big reps asked.
That is, yep. If the district is located in an area where the coal-fired power plant shut down within the last year, or will be shutting down, yes, there will be preference given to those projects.
All right. Question here from Mike. Can state contract programs used for the bidding / procurement process? For example, KPN or CoStars?
That's an interesting question. I wasn't aware that so I wasn't aware that CoStars, because we deal with CoStars a lot in KPN as well, but I wasn't aware that they sell and install solar equipment. I'll have to
Maybe
look into
something,
that.
yeah, maybe something we can include in the FAQ sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to write that down as something that to follow up with. That's an
Thanks.
interesting question.
Leo or Alexis, if you see any questions in here that you wanted to get to as well. Trying to stay on top of them as they're coming in and more just pouring in. So
Yeah, I'm trying to answer what I can, in the Q&A. And there was a good question I just want to address. We all will be providing a recording of this webinar to everybody that's registered and a transcript of Q&A. So if you don't feel it's moving quickly, there's a lot to cover. Don't feel like this is your last shot, obviously. We'll be doing our best to make sure everyone has all this information. And I'm sure I don't want to promise anything of you, Brian, more than you already done, but I'm sure you're going to be fielding a lot of questions and updating.
Absolutely. And I know we have a number of different meetings and webinars set up. We're going to be conducting a webinar. I think we're going to be doing a webinar too. I'm not quite certain on that. I'm working with our marketing team to figure out when that's going to happen, but there'll be other opportunities to hear and ask questions about the program.
Yeah, and just jump the queue a little bit. We did get a question that kind of corresponds with some of the topics we've been addressed just now. A question from Ken Katinsky at Camber Heights School District, where I went to school. And we've been working with Ken as well on some solar projects. Happy to have you in the call. But he asked, is the school eligible for a grant if they work with an energy savings company in ESCO, such as McClure, Snyder, or 10? I just reiterate, to save you a moment, Brian, if the assessor for the site cannot be the provider for the installation, that's correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Right. So you'd have to, if you're working with McClure or whomever, you'd have to get a third-party assessment if you want them to be your installer.
That's correct.
Good question from Grace here. Confirming the definition of an educational building, does that preclude a district from applying for a solar array at a bus garage or depot building?
So I would need a little more information on that. I'm not going to say absolutely not. There are I would encourage the person to reach out to me or Devin to talk about this a little bit further. So that's okay as long as, again, it's on a campus with multiple buildings with 1 meter. So it can't be like a bus stop in front of a building. So we have to look at, we need to have more information on that to see if it would make sense. But I'm not going to say no.
All right, we'll get you the answer. There's a question, and I'm sorry, we already covered this. If a site assessment was previously completed prior to the grant announcement, can the assessor also be the installer? So for example, a developer had provided an assessment a few months ago. Can that developer be eligible to bid on that project if they use that assessment
No.
in the application?
No.
Okay, so you need an additional assessment completed.
No, I mean, let me just rephrase that question to see if I'm understanding it correctly. They had a solar assessment done, and the entity who did the solar assessment wants to do the installation.
Correct.
No.
Okay.
Just a quick update. We'll have about 10 more minutes
Yeah, I see
available if
there's
you
a
have questions.
question in there about buy-in, out, and revitalizing an existing PPA system be eligible. No, that would not be eligible. These are for, just so you know, let me just do a little clarification. This project is for new projects going forward, not projects that have already started. That's just the way that our program works. And so if there's you have an existing PPA, again, we can't do PPAs, but the system cannot be revitalized. This would be new installation for schools that, need solar that don't have it already.
Quick question, Brian. Somebody asked that obviously we can't use a power purchase agreement, but is there any restrictions on excess energy generation? So is there a cap to the system size relative to the consumption on site?
No,
Great.
there's not.
Another
Yeah,
question here.
just answer this really quickly. I had a couple of questions about understanding what PA Solar Center's role in the new grant. We submitted our documentation to be qualified as a assessor. So we are not an installer or involved in that piece of it. We'll talk a little bit about it in the presentation, but we do site assessments. We submit our paperwork, and that's the update we can give you for right now.
And yes, that's exactly. PA Solar Center would be an entity eligible to do the site assessments.
Question here, would the grant award funds allow us to install solar and a battery system if we wanted to store excess solar energy to use as a backup generator, or would that be at the cost of the school after the solar project is complete?
If the battery is going to be storing excess electricity generated by the solar system, then yes, that would be eligible.
Okay, so it'd have to be a solar plus battery system, and the two systems coupled together that would be able to store the excess energy.
Yes.
Great. Question from Nicole. She said not a critical question, but I think it's important. Why is there a $100 application fee for schools to submit?
Yeah, it is an application. It's a cost of the it's a standard application fee that we have set for all of our programs that get awarded through the Commonwealth Financing Authority. I know this is a DCED program, but there is a little nuance to it that DCED is involved, is taking the application and doing that, but the final approval goes through the Commonwealth Financing Authority, which is a policy that they have on their end.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Would the cost of structural steel on a new parking lot solar canopy be eligible for funds?
So I will say this. I'm confused about the little structural steel thing. I mean, anything that we're putting, let me go back. Anything that the solar system is being put on, we can't do the structural integrity of. That has to be in place. However, if there is a canopy, and I know some schools have that on their entranceway, there's a canopy that walks out over as kids that depart the school. There's a canopy. If they wanted to put solar on something like that, absolutely. As long as the site assessment says it's structurally sound enough to do that, then yes. And also carports too. If there are carports on the campus that they wanted to put solar on, yes, as long as it's on the meter.
Great. Does the installation need to be tied to the grid, or can it be a fully off-grid system? They're specifically looking at a remote nature center. And this might have to do with the meters that are on site as part of the application package.
I would encourage that. again, fully off the grid. I would encourage that person to reach out. I would like to know a little bit more about that specific project. I would, before answering that question, that's very specific, and off grid. I mean, we typically in our checklist, have you guys that we have provided on our website say, look, we want to make sure that you've reached out to the utilities so that you know what the interconnection requirements are. A fully off the grid system, I'm not. I need a little bit more information on that before giving an answer. So if that person could reach out to me directly, that would be great.
Yeah, and just a friendly reminder, if we don't get to all of your questions today, we're happy to go through those, shortly and have that FAQ page up. These are a lot of really good questions.
I want to jump in really quickly, John.
Yeah.
Representative Fiedler, I think, had something to add, so I want to make sure we give her opportunity.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I think that's all amazing information. Appreciate all the questions. I did just want to add, like, big picture, because I know this is a very fast timeline, especially for all the school folks who need to get approvals, obviously within their respective districts. And, it's a really big capital project to take on. I just wanted to emphasize something that I think Brian said in the beginning, which is our hope, our goal is that this is a pilot year for Solar for Schools. So this is not a one-time thing. This is the first year with the $25 million appropriation. We are excited for an appropriation of any size, but certainly our goal and my expectation, one of the things we're going to work as hard as we can on is making this pilot year a big success, and then using that momentum and the interest in this program. And it's awesome to have more than 200 people on here, using the interest to push, to fight for a second year, a third year, a fourth year, and hopefully having growing appropriations. We take nothing for granted in the state legislature ever, but I just want to be very clear about that. I know Brian, mentioned it in the beginning, but the goal really is a pilot project. So if you feel like, your district, it's not possible in these coming months, certainly feel free to reach out to Brian and his team and see if there is a way to work it. But if not, please know that, like, our goal very much is this will be an ongoing and a growing program in the future. So hopefully it will not be a one-time thing, and you'll have future opportunities to apply. And that was it. And thank you, Brian, and everyone for answering so many questions.
Yeah, and just to reiterate one thing on that time frame, that time frame was selected so that we could have time to get the approvals done, the contracting done, so that by the end of the school year, you could be ready to install the solar. I mean, we're trying to take that into consideration as well in this, with the, how schools operate and their timing and stuff. So that was another factor that we looked into in this application window.
Yeah, and I can speak, from an organization that works with school districts or other organizations on site assessment, and just more broadly, not necessarily for this program, but generally speaking, that's not the biggest time sink or the holdup. I mean, you can get a feasibility report fairly quickly. It's making sure the grant paperwork, all that stuff is, and then assuming you get a grant, getting the installation, going through that process, that's where your time sink is. So I think it is very reasonable to want to get this portal in and out as quickly as possible, so we can really get and the installers of the world can get to the really chunky part of the process.
Thanks, Leo. Liz McQuaid had a great question. Are there any restrictions about procuring additional funding for the Solar for Schools grant? So kind of stacking, say, a utility rebate, Act 129 rebate, or additional funding in order to
No, I would hope the school districts would take advantage of those.
Great.
Yeah, not at all, but they should. But yes, you should take advantage of all those that you are eligible for, and there's no restriction on that.
All right, folks, we have about 4 more minutes to answer questions. I'm sure we can pack a lot in there, but just a reminder, we'll make sure that there's a forum for folks to get their questions answered if you don't during this webinar. But I'll let John tee it up, the next one.
Let's see here. Okay. If your facility does need to have an infrastructure investment separate, say the roof needs to be replaced, something like that, do you have to have that completed before you submit the grant?
Well, yes. I mean, we're going to want to know before that we award the funds that the roof system or wherever it's going is going to can structurally handle it. That's the purpose of the part of the solar assessment, and that's what that's going to tell us. If it can't handle it, then and there has to be improvements maybe for it before you can be awarded. Yeah, that's going to have to be done prior to the application.
Okay, and then piggybacking on that, is there a time allocation to have these funds spent? Like, is it a 2-year window, a 3-year window for the project to be completed?
Yeah, no. So our hope is that we're if you like some of my answers here, we are hoping to deploy these funds rather quickly. That's why we want projects that are ready to go and going so that we can show to the legislature, hey, look, this is what we can do if we had $25 million of solar funds. So so that's why we want to make sure that these projects are ready to go when they come in. I'm sorry, went there. The question was,
I guess what's the deadline to have spent the funds on the project?
Our grant agreements are for 3 years with the option of another year extension. We're hoping that it doesn't take that long, though. I mean, that's why, in our review of talking to various installers, PA Solar Center and other states, like, typically these can be done within an 18-month period. And so we thought that, well, that's why we kept it with our same grant contracting. Like 3 years should be plenty enough time to get a solar system installed on there. But if you need additional time for, because things come up all the time, there is mechanisms in place to extend that.
Great, thank you. An anonymous question here. When do you find out about the selection if you're awarded, and how soon does that money get dispersed?
The money will get dispersed. So our system is our process is a reimbursement process. So you would incur the costs, submit the invoices to us, and then we would reimburse you for those costs. That's our process, and that timing can take place during the installation. Like it could be while you're installing it. We don't have to wait for the funds. The funds are there. So it's not an issue of those funds. It's more of getting the application in, getting the application approved. Once approved, our contracting process, we can get a contract out within a week. I have not dealt with school districts myself. I don't know what their internal process is as far as executing those documents and reviewing those documents. But as quickly as you can get those executed documents back to us, the funds will be available.
Okay. And then what if the district applies, is awarded, and decides not to move forward with the project?
Those funds will come back to the program, and we'll allocate them to another project. There's no penalty.
Okay.
That's the question.
What's the process of becoming a qualified assessor? Should folks reach out to you and Devin?
Yes.
Okay.
And will you folks be hosting like a list of qualified assessors as you compile them, or is there a more centralized way source that for folks interested?
We're not going to be like I said, we're not going to be compiling a list. What we're going to be looking at is the qualifications of the installer and the assessor that was used on the project. So we're not going to be maintaining a list of qualified installers.
Okay. Yep. Sorry if you answered that already.
No, that's fine.
No,
that's not a problem.
Lots of great questions. We got through 38 of them. We're at time. I wanted to be cognizant and not continue to pepper Brian thank you so much for filling in information as needed, and we can get to the remaining questions in the FAQ sheet. I really appreciate
Yes.
all the participation in today's webinar.
Yeah, and I have, I'm going to be following up, and please take a look at the FAQs because I made a note on a couple of those items. The KPN and the CoStars issue, that is something that I was unfamiliar that they even did solar, so I will be looking into that to see if that's a possibility, and if so, we'll be updating our FAQ page on that one. And also the remote and fully off the grid system. That is something that we've not contemplated, but I will be updating the FAQs with that as well.
And just so folks, I think some folks, we're not ending the presentation yet. We have a little bit more
Yeah,
to
sorry
talk
about
but we are ending this piece of the Q&A, and there might be a little bit of time at the end. So if you could stick with us for about 15 more minutes, we can tell you a little bit more about what the PA Solar Center does, and that'll probably be insightful for folks to understand maybe what the experience of working with an assessor is if you haven't already contacted a solar array, or a solar installer. But really quickly, Brian, thank you so much. That was a battery of questions. I know this guidance just came out. You know, folks have worked really hard on it, but we really appreciate you sitting here with us and taking the time to answer a lot of questions, rapid fire. That was a really great presentation. Thank you.
I'll stay on until in case there's questions at the end if there's time.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and please, folks, if feel free to dunk them in the chat, and there's still a possibility we could answer those. But I'd like to tell you a little bit more about PA Solar Center's Get Solar program. So we are currently working with organizations all across the state, all types of organizations, to provide the kind of assessment that is required of this program. It's sort of foundational to how we approach our work, helping organizations seek solar. We have been operational for a couple of years right now. Our team's grown really rapidly, but we have 10 completed projects. We have about a dozen that are somewhere in the contracting process or installation, or working on their last bit of their finances, or have their finances in order and are getting their assessment. Currently we have 2.2 megawatts installed, and we expect to double or triple that in the next couple of years. And by that I mean, like, we've supported organizations through securing their solar array by providing the feasibility, supporting RFP management. I'll talk a little bit more about what we do, but suffice to say, we've worked with a lot of organizations that have had sort of unique needs, and working with a lot of school districts right now to help them understand how they can go solar. In our queue right now, we have about just shy of 300 projects that are at some phase, either just reached out to us on our website and we're working through this basic feasibility report, or we've released a request for proposals, a competitive bid on their behalf, or working with them if they're a public entity to make sure that they have all their requirements in place, scheduling site assessments with the developers that are actually going to bid, and then helping them review their finance and making sure that they have a pretty good capital stack. But we try to prioritize organizations in Justice 40 communities. We are not restricting that. If you're a school district that doesn't fit that requirement and you want to reach out to us for service, happy to provide that. Our Get Solar Schools program, we started this around 18 months ago, really in earnest, which just happened to correspond very well with this legislation being introduced and passed very quickly. We're working with about 46 schools right now. That number is growing every day, but we're trying to help them through some phase of understanding how they can get solar. A couple things about finance on solar. I know folks had questions about these pieces, and we just want to cover as quickly as possible. The Inflation Reduction Act is a real boon to nonprofit organizations seeking solar, because it's now providing you an avenue to access tax value. For for-profit entities for a long time, decades, this has been a realistic approach to financing their solar. Because of the IRA, you can use it too. All of you are capable of accessing this 30% base value. So basically, you're not a tax-paying entity, but the IRS will give you a check. We're saying within 18 months of completion of the project. I think that's a safe number. And they'll send you a check for 30% of the value, that cash value of what you paid. That includes if you financed it. There's ways that can happen with the power purchase agreement. That's a little bit more complicated. But if you're purchasing the solar array, you're getting the grant that stacks evenly. So the grant does not depreciate that total value. So if you install $1 million project, you get a $250,000 grant. You still get that the 30% base based on your complete purchase, that $1 million. There's some additional bonuses depending on where your community is located. That 10% energy community bonus applies to a lot of the schools that are on this call right now. That's based on maps provided by the federal government. We have, we'll qualify that for any organization reaching out to us. Those maps are reassessed annually in the summer. So it is possible that you might qualify, and then before you can complete the purchase of your system, you might not qualify the year later. There's some grandfathering, but if you're in an eligible area, you're likely to be able to access that 10% additional bonus. There's a 10% bonus for domestic content. That's more of a moving target in today's solar world as those resources starting being developed and become more available. Right now, we don't see a lot of projects eligible for that, but that will change over time, and maybe that'll change significantly next year. Folks mentioned this in some of the questions, like there is a utility rebate in every utility, public utility market. Right now, PECO has the strongest, that 10 cent per kilowatt hour generated. I don't want to get too deep into how this works, but suffice it to say, if you install a solar array, your utility company is going to give you an Act 129 rebate based on your first year production. So, here, very, very low number, $100,000 system, that might be a $5,000 incentive. If you're installing a large system that offsets the entire usage of a school district, that's probably going to be a six-figure value that's returned to you within that first year. And really the key for how to think about solar is the grant's wonderful. You have these tax benefits. That's wonderful too. But you do need some sort of like financing strategy to cover the cost, upfront costs, or to defray that upfront cost and try to realize more immediate savings. And really the three big ways, I mean, folks have mentioned Giza, kind of subcategorize that a bit in the financing model, but cash purchasing, financing, and power purchase agreements are like the big three opportunities. Cash purchase, we'll show you some modeling here. Our friends at Homer Center School District were really gracious to let us share a little bit of information about their solar array and where as we're moving through the assessment of this. But it's not a large system, but not atypical for what a school district is going to see. 1.7 megawatts, it offsets 100% of the site usage on their facility here. They would be, on paper eligible for a $500,000 Solar for Schools grant, and they would, on paper, receive $1.2 million of reimbursement money through that IRA, that tax benefit, and then like I said, a six-figure Act 129 rebate that we think would be secured within 9 months. This very slapdash chart just shows, business as usual for us. You currently, if you're on this call, you're obviously interested in going solar, but if you're paying an electricity bill to the utility company right now, you have debt in perpetuity. I mean, that's really a way that we think about it. You have a loan out for your electricity forever, and you don't get to control the interest rates. Financing, cash purchases, they have their advantages and disadvantages, but really what solar lets you do is control this expense through time. And you can see here, cash purchase, that in year 5, there's not a significant amount of savings because there's the upfront cost to be absorbed. But then really rapidly, after that year 5, there's a huge increase in the value of the solar. And when we work with an organization, we break it down year by year. We're just trying to give you kind of a high-level view of what it looks like. Solar right now, like a system is pretty much, in many ways, you have warranties for the modules for 30 years. There's no reason to think a solar system can't survive after that 40 years. We see that in real time, even from solar arrays that are older technology. But we think 25 years is a really sound stopping point to think about the value. And school districts, you're going to be around for this amount of time. So it's really not inconsiderable to think about decades of value being generated. And $5 million over 25 years is a significant amount of value generated. We're using a really stock conventional loan concept here, a 5% annual interest with the IRA payment being used to buy down the loan in that year 2. But you can see here a very different story. If you're using financing, you're seeing kind of immediate savings, often year 1. So it's a way for school not to have that cash outlay to take advantage of the grant, take advantage of these other benefits. But we also know that there are some regional programs available, and there's some statewide programs that may become available through some of the like the Energy Development Authority and the work that DEP is doing. We can't speak to that concretely, but there may be some extremely competitive financing options to pair with this grant so that your school district is not out any money up front and is actually seeing savings in real time. The grant is not eligible, right now with the power purchase agreement, but we do want to speak a little bit to it because it's 90% of schools that have gone solar in the state have used the power purchase agreement to date. And the real value of it is that it's not a cash expense or a financed, conventional financed system. The developer that creates the system owns and operates it, and is responsible for all the cash outlay. So this is never ever it was never ever the school's concern how to own and operate and maintain this, but they're going to agree to purchase the electricity generated by the system, and you're going to lease the property to the solar developer near your facilities or your rooftop so that they can build it. This is a really great way to stabilize electricity costs over a long period of time and to do that without spending your own money and get a discount. I mean, a lot of solar developers with their power purchase agreements to scale are offering pretty competitive rates, lower than what you're paying right now, and certainly lower than what we expect electricity rates to look like over the next couple of years. Some schools here might elect to take this route. You might not be eligible if you're outside of the parameters of a private school with certain, there's a lot of eligibility through the grant. I don't want to speak to that because of the guidance is out, but for whatever reason, this might be a good option for you, and we're always happy to help folks explore it. An example of this that we've done in the past is Community College of Allegheny County. Community colleges are eligible for the Solar for Schools grant, but that didn't exist at the time that we helped CCAC through our program. Their estimated savings, having spent no money at all at any point during this process, it's going to be close to $1 million, particularly because we modeled this before electricity rates climbed during the pandemic. So this was a really great deal for them. They locked in low electricity rates for a long period of time, and now they're pretty happy with their decision. I know I'm moving quickly. I'm sorry. We'll have time for questions, or we'll give you our contact information, our website, our email to reach out to us. But we really try to make this as painless as possible for folks on this call. Probably the step one is really what you're interested in learning a little bit about, this feasibility and high level analysis. We also can help organizations through the competitive bidding process. We've done this with school districts. We've done this with public entities. I know that's a big concern for a lot of folks. Like, how do we actually secure an appropriate solar developer's bid after we get the assessment? That's something we can help you with. Even potentially if we didn't do that original site assessment, we are an unbiased third-party entity that just facilitates your engagement with those solar developers that would do the work. Here are just a couple examples of models that we've done for organizations. This is actually all one organization with 3 sites here, but it shows, we ground mount rooftop, a couple different arrangements. Folks on our team have worked in the solar world. We use industry standard tools like Helioscope to do our modeling, and we use some of our own modeling that we've developed for the cash flow, and the assumptions, the utility rates. But we also use some powerful software tools to double check our math. A couple more school feasibility designs. Just again, very high level, very quick, just to show you, what we model for you. And then we produce a couple page report, including some high level views of this, like this, to show what cash outlay you would have if you were purchasing the system, the benefits you might have, system size, like all the high level details you would need to understand what the benefit of solar is for your organization moving forward. And we're going to look at those IRA benefits, the grants, rebates. Some folks have mentioned SRECs in the chat. Not something we want to get into in this call, but there's another stream of revenue produced by solar renewable energy credits that have some different value propositions depending on what your school is trying to achieve. But that can be built into the calculus. And we also account for, to our best effort, operations and maintenance costs and expenses associated with the solar owning it long term. We secure those qualified competitive bids. My cat wanted to join the call. So we work with the developers to make sure that the folks that are bidding are absolutely qualified and have the appropriate financing capacity to do the work. We only work with those, and we are really concerned with ensuring that you're getting the most competitive bids possible from organizations that know how to do the work. And then we'll present it to you in as apples to apples fashion as possible. You'll get the completed proposals or the complete proposal packet and all the information about the developer and the project that they're offering to build. But we try to organize that data in a way that anyone in your organization can look side by side and see like, oh, here, this is the largest project, this is the least expensive, or what, however you need to evaluate your criteria, we'll make sure that it's formatted in a way that's very easy for you to use. And last but not least, our contact information. We have our Get Solar landing page and a schools page. On that, there's a really simple assessment. You just basically typing in really basic information about your school, address, contact information. That gets you in our queue so we can reach out to you and start the process of a more detailed site evaluation. For the majority of schools that reach out to us, we do this for free, like those Justice 40 areas, LIDAC communities. We're trying to make this super accessible. There are some cases where we assess a fee based on complexity or the location of the school district, but to date, those charges have been extraordinarily small, certainly relative to what you're going to see maybe in the private market, unlikely. We are a nonprofit. We've got to make sure our programming can last too. But we'll give you all that information up front, and we can move fairly quickly. I know folks are very concerned about that timeline to get done by January. And once we receive notification that we're considered a qualified assessor, we will start getting folks out the door as quickly as possible. This won't take more than a couple weeks to go start to finish on the assessment piece of it. So I know we have basically 2 minutes of the promised time of the webinar. If there's anything I can answer, John, please queue up and I'll try to rip through it. But folks can reach out to us anytime. We're always happy to jump on a call or field an email.
Yeah, I'll just say I dropped our link to our Get Solar page in the chat. So if you want to visit that website, our pre-qualification survey is on there, and that's a good way to get in touch with us. I'll also drop my email in the chat as well. And we would be happy to help your districts explore solar.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks. Well, we're so grateful to have such a huge attendance for this. I know everyone's really excited about this grant opportunity, and I'm echoing Representative Fiedler's statement. We hope that this is the beginning of many program years and advancements and new opportunities in the solar world for Pennsylvania. I've learned to never bet against Representative Fiedler, so if she tells me it's possible, I'm going to believe it. But we're really grateful for Brian and Devin and the folks at DCED for turning this program around so quickly. This is really exciting stuff. I know everyone's in the weeds on how to get this done and the frenetic pace of submitting everything, but just ground ourselves, and we're excited to have this opportunity, and there are folks out there that'll help you get it done. Great. Well, thanks everybody. I'm going to end the webinar. I hope you have a lovely weekend and enjoy this beautiful fall weather.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.